Assalamu alaikum, dear students and dear viewers. Today, uh, we will talk about saprotropic nutrition in plants. This is for class 7. In fact, we have been talking about different modes of nutrition in plants for last so many days. And only yesterday, I told you about parasitic mode of nutrition in plants. I also talked about some insectivorous plants. And today we will talk about one more type of nutrition in plants. It's saprotropic mode of nutrition. Generally, we think that there are only green plants around us, but there are non-green plants as well. Non-green plants as well. Okay. When it comes to non-green plants, you must know that these non-green plants, they do not have chlorophyll. And when they do not have chlorophyll, that means they are incapable of performing a very, very important process called photosynthesis. If you remember, I told you in the very first lecture, while I was discussing with you the autotrophic mode of nutrition, I told you that chlorophyll is very, very essential for the process of photosynthesis. Without chlorophyll, plants cannot photosynthesize. If these non-green plants cannot photosynthesize, it means that they cannot synthesize food for themselves. They cannot synthesize food for themselves. If they can't synthesize food for themselves, then they have to find some other way, they have to find some other means for procuring food. And the method that these non-green plants actually resort to for procuring food is called as saprotropic nutrition. Saprotropic nutrition. And as an example of a non-green plant, you can give the example of a fungi. Fungi is plural, fungus is singular. Okay, the example is a fungi. Fungi are non-green plants. And how these fungi obtain their food? They grow on dead and decaying matter. Dead and decaying matter to procure food. But this dead and decaying matter, it is in the very complex form. Complex form. These fungi, they do not, they cannot take food in the very complex form because they cannot digest it. So as to make this dead and decaying matter digestible and to turn it into a simple solution, these fungi, what they do to make it a simple solution, they secrete a number of enzymes. They secrete a number of enzymes. And what do these enzymes do? They convert this complex dead decaying matter into simple solution. After this has been converted to simple solution, these fungi then absorb it. That's why we say the fungi, the nutrition is fungi is called as absorptive nutrition. Absorptive nutrition, because they absorb nutrients from the dead and decaying matter. But before absorbing them, they convert this dead and decaying matter into a very into simpler solution, or the complex molecules are converted into very simpler molecules, and they do this with the help of the enzymes they secrete. These enzymes, we can say, if in the very simplest terminology, we can say these enzymes help the fungi to digest the dead and decaying matter. Therefore, we can now define the term what is saprotrophic nutrition. It's a type of nutrition in which non-green plants procure or procure their food from dead and decaying matter. That means non-green plants, they obtain their food from dead and decaying matter. This is called as saprotrophic nutrition. And all those plants who obtain their food from dead and decaying matter, they are called as saprotrophs. Then, for example, what is fungi? Fungus is a saprotroph. It is a saprotroph because it obtains its food from dead and decaying matter. Now, there is one thing very, very important associated with these fungi. Since they feed on dead and decaying matter, they are also called as cleaning agents. That means they just consume the dead and decaying matter, and therefore they in a way help in the cleaning of the environment. That's why they are called as cleaning agents as well, and rightly so. There is you must be wondering that what actually this fungus is. If you really want to see the fungus with your own eyes, just do a simple thing at home. Take a piece of bread and sprinkle water over it, and keep this piece of bread in a moist environment for a couple of days. After a couple of days, you will definitely find on the same piece of bread you will find thread-like structures and some green and some brown patches, This is actually the growth of fungi on the bread. Therefore, we came to know that this moist environment is very, very suitable for the growth of fungi. One. Number two, this fungi, now the question is how these fungi are actually sometimes you will find them on trees, sometimes you will find them on bread, sometimes you will find them even in the wet cloths. But how do they get there? You know, the spores of fungi. If you are not able to understand these spores, I can, although this is not a proper term, but just for the sake of your comfort, I will say these are eggs of fungi. They are always floating in the air, and whenever they find any suitable place, that's moist environment, warmth, they land on that particular object. For example, if you keep the wet cloths, just you do not expose them to the sun. You will keep them wet and you will just store them anywhere or keep them anywhere. There is every likelihood that this fungi will grow on them, or sometimes they will they will make their way into your shoes, and sometimes even they will make their way into the pickles. So that's why you will find these fungi. Now, there is one thing very, very important that I wanted to talk about yesterday, but I couldn't find it suitable then to talk to you about that particular relationship. And this, in fact, I talked about parasitic relationship, and where I told you that in parasitic relationship, the one organism is harmed and another is benefited. But today we will talk about symbiotic relationship. No, this is a very healthy relationship, I can say, in other words. Why? Because in symbiotic relationship, the two different organisms working together are mutually benefited. None of them is harmed. None of them is harmed. None of them is at loss. Both of them get mutually benefited. Because this is a mutually beneficial relationship between the two different organisms. So two different organisms working together for their mutual benefit, mutual benefit is called symbiotic relationship, is called symbiosis. What is symbiosis? When two different organisms live together for their mutual benefit, this is called as symbiosis, and the relation is called as symbiotic relationship. The relationship is called as symbiotic relationship. I can give you an example, a simple example I can give you to make you understand what is the symbiotic relationship. Certain fungi, not all, but certain fungi, they live in the roots of trees. Now, these fungi live in the roots of trees. You must be thinking that since fungi derive the nutrition from them, so they might be harming the trees, but that's not the fact. The fact is that this tree provides nutrients. It provides nutrients to the fungi. And in return, what does tree get from the fungi? Now, this fungi, what it does, it helps plant to take up water and nutrients from the soil. Therefore, if I can tell you, for example, these are trees, they provide nutrients to fungi, and fungi in turn provide what? They help plants to take up what? Water and nutrients from soil. Therefore, both the fungi and the tree, they got equally benefited. This is called as symbiosis. Or I can give you the example of there is an organism called lichens. If you have heard this term ever, lichens, lichens, lichens. So before I tell you what lichen, how the symbiosis between the lichens and the fungus. I must tell you something about these lichens first, because they're very interesting. See, as far as these lichens are concerned, lichens are actually chlorophyll containing algae. Chlorophyll containing plants, in other words, I can say. But unlike plants, these lichens do not have roots, unfortunately. And do you know that these lichens, they cover almost 7% of the earth? 7% of the earth's surface is covered by lichens. So, silent features of lichens are that lichens, they have no roots. They do not have roots like plants. Unlike plants, they do not have roots. If they do not have roots, then how come they absorb? How come they then absorb things? Because they do not have roots. So what they do? They absorb all the substances. They absorb all substances from atmosphere. Whatever is there in the atmosphere, they absorb it. Please remember this, because this is very important to remember, because when I will then after this I will tell you something very, very important about lichens, where this thing is going to be very handy. Number 3, they do not have any structure. No structure. They are structureless. I mean, they have no structures like cell wall and all that to protect themselves from harmful particles of the atmosphere. If the atmosphere is full of harmful gases, harmful substances, they are going to have an impact on the lichens. Number three, if you talk about the habitat of lichens, they are found everywhere on the rocks. You will find them on the rocks. You will find them on land. You will find them on trees. They are everywhere. They are everywhere. Since they do not have structures to protect themselves from harmful substances, therefore they are very sensitive. They are very sensitive to what? They are very sensitive to pollutants. Pollutants. Why? Because they do not have structures to protect themselves. Since they are very, very sensitive to pollutants, therefore, if the air quality, if the air quality is not good, or if the air is, if there is pollution in the air, if the air is polluted, lichens get affected. Lichens get affected. Lichens get affected. So we can say, if, for example, if you go to an industrial area and you want to see what kind of environment is there, if there are no lichens in a particular area, if there are no lichens in a particular area, it means that the air quality of that area is poor. That means there are a lot of harmful substances present in the air. But if you go to a particular area and you will find a large number of these lichens, because there's a great variation as far as the lichens are concerned. If you find the lichens in abundance in a particular area, it indicates that the environment of that very area is clean. Therefore, lichens are called as environmental bioindicators. Why? Because they tell us about the environment, whether the environment is clean, whether the environment is polluted. Okay? Therefore, industrial areas, the areas where you have a lot of industries, you will see there is either less or no lichen growth in those areas. Why? Because the air is polluted. Since they do not have structures to protect themselves from the harmful substances in the air, so these lichens come in contact with those harmful gases, harmful substances, and therefore their growth gets hampered, their growth gets retarded, and there's no growth. Okay, therefore they are called as environmental bioindicators because they tell us about the health of an environment. Okay, now this was just an important thing about lichens. Now let's go to the main issue, that is symbiosis. Now this lichen, as I told you, and a fungus, that means lichen is an algae containing chlorophyll. That means it can photosynthesis, it can prepare its food by itself. On the other hand, there is one fungi. Fungi is a non-green plant, it cannot photosynthesize. These two partner, chlorophyll, this lichen and fungi, they partner. Now what do they do for each other? This fungus, it lives together with the with this lichen, but how do they actually help each other? Do you know this fungus, it provides shelter, water and minerals to the lichen, and what does this lichen do for the fungi? Since lichens are they have chlorophyll, so they photosynthesize, they prepare food by themselves, and they provide food to the fungus, fungi. That means if fungi provides shelter, water and mineral to the lichen in turn provides food to the fungus. This is again symbiosis, because both the lichen and the fungus, they are mutually benefited. So this is all about symbiotic relationship or symbiosis. Thank you very much.